You won't believe what happened when Karen decided to flood my yard with water from her pool land. How I turned the tables in a way she never saw coming. It all started on a hot summer afternoon when I noticed my backyard slowly turning into a small pond. At first, I thought it was just some rain or maybe a sprinkler issue, but soon it became clear. Karen, my next-door neighbor, was deliberately letting her pool water spill over right into my yard. You know the type entitled, always pushing boundaries, acting like the rules don't apply to them. And this wasn't just a one-time thing. It was happening over and over. Karen has always been a bit of a headache in the neighborhood, but this was next level. I tried talking to her, hoping she'd understand the damage she was causing. Spoiler alert, she didn't. Instead, she shrugged it off like it was no big deal, acting like I was the one causing trouble. That's when I realized if she's going to be so careless and entitled, I had to take matters into my own hands without breaking any rules or crossing any serious lines. I started brainstorming a way to get her to see how it feels when someone else's water floods their space. What happened next was a game changer. I rerouted the water she was flooding into my yard back into her own living room. Yes, you heard that right. The tables turned in the most unexpected way, and Karen was completely blindsided. But how did I manage it? And what did Karen do once she saw her own home getting drenched? Well, that's where things got really interesting. And trust me, it's not over yet. Stay tuned, because this story is far from finished. You're going to want to hear every detail about this wild neighbor showdown and how entitlement can sometimes backfire in the most satisfying way. For years, Karen and I have lived side by side in this quiet neighborhood, but our relationship has never been smooth. She's one of those neighbors who believes she owns the street, acting like her way is the only way, no matter how much it disrupts others. The pool was her latest pride, and joy, a big, shiny addition she installed last summer. At first, I thought it was great for the community, a fun place for her kids and friends. But then the problems started. She didn't just maintain the pool. She treated the whole yard like her personal water park, ignoring how the excess water affected the rest of us. The flooding was subtle at first, a little damp grass here, a small puddle there, but it quickly grew worse. My backyard, which I've worked hard on to keep neat and dry, turned soggy and unusable. Plants began to wilt, and my kids couldn't play outside without slipping in the mud. I tried asking Karen nicely to fix it, or at least talk about a solution. But she brushed me off with a fake smile, acting like I was making a big deal over nothing. That's when I realized this wasn't going to stop on its own. I started looking into options, how to legally and safely manage water flow without escalating things with the HOA or the city. It wasn't easy, but I found a way to redirect the water using simple drainage pipes and a bit of clever planning. The idea wasn't just about stopping the flooding. It was about showing Karen what it feels like when your own actions cause trouble for others. But doing this meant I had to be patient, careful, and ready for whatever reaction she might have. The tension between us grew thicker by the day. Every time I saw her smirking or ignoring the problem, I felt more determined to stand my ground. What would happen when Karen finally realized her own living room was getting flooded? Would she get angry, or would she finally understand? The neighborhood was watching, and so was I, waiting for that moment when things would explode or settle. But the story was far from over, and the next move could change everything. As the days passed, the water kept creeping closer, and the tension between Karen and me wasn't just about the flooding anymore. It became personal. I noticed how she'd glance over the fence with that smug look, like she was daring me to say something again. Meanwhile, I was balancing between trying to keep the peace and standing up for my home. It wasn't just my yard at stake. This whole situation started affecting my family. My kids stopped wanting to play outside, and my spouse grew frustrated seeing the damage and the constant drama. Neighbors started taking sides, too. Some quietly sympathized with me, shaking their heads at how Karen acted like the rules didn't apply to her. Others whispered that maybe I was overreacting. It felt like the whole block was holding its breath, waiting for the next move in this neighborhood standoff. That kind of social pressure only made me more determined, but also more cautious. Then there was the HOA always lurking in the background. I debated whether to bring them in, but Karen had a way of twisting things and painting me as the problem. Plus, I didn't want to risk making things worse by escalating the fight officially. I had to be smart about it, using a subtle approach, to show her that flooding my yard wasn't something I'd accept silently. Meanwhile, I was quietly working on my plan, making sure the rerouting of the water was done right. It wasn't easy because the pipes had to be hidden, the flow controlled carefully to avoid any real damage, but enough to make a statement. I wondered what Karen would do when she started noticing water pooling where it shouldn't in her own living room. Would she freak out? Deny it? Or maybe, just maybe, finally realize the mess she'd caused? Every day felt like walking a tightrope. The tension grew heavier, and the neighborhood drama wasn't just about water anymore. Was about respect, boundaries, and what happens when entitlement goes unchecked. And just when I thought things couldn't get more intense, something unexpected happened that threatened to change everything. The day I activated the rerouted water system, my heart was pounding. I knew this was the moment everything could change. Either Karen would finally get the message, or things would spiral out of control. I watched from my porch, pretending to mind my own business, but every sound from her yard made me jump. The gentle splash of water, the distant clatter of something falling. Even the sudden quiet it all felt like signs I was about to witness something big. At first, nothing seemed different. Karen was outside, chatting on the phone completely unaware that her pool water was no longer flooding my yard, but quietly making its way under her fence and toward her home. Minutes later, I noticed the subtle rise of water near her porch, a small puddle forming where it shouldn't be. My stomach tightened. Was this working? I caught Karen's reaction the moment she spotted it. Her eyes widened, confusion turning quickly into panic. She stomped toward the puddle, muttering under her breath, trying to figure out why water was pooling near her front door. I could see the frustration building, her usual confidence starting to crack. She called out to her kids to help dry it up, but it kept coming, slow but steady. The neighborhood was buzzing now. People whispered behind fences. Some came close to peek, and I knew word would spread fast. Karen started pacing, checking windows and doors, clearly unsettled. I could almost hear the wheels turning in her mind. How did this happen? Who could have done this to her? But she wasn't ready to back down. If anything, Karen's pride made her dig in deeper, ready to fight back, ready to turn this into something bigger. I held my breath, knowing that the next few hours would decide everything. Would she admit defeat? Or would this water war escalate beyond anything I expected? The tension was unbearable, and the story was on the edge of exploding, just as I thought. The situation couldn't get any more intense. Something unexpected happened that turned the whole neighborhood upside down. While Karen was busy scrambling to contain the water flooding her living room, I noticed a truck pull up in front of her house, an unfamiliar one, large and clearly not belonging to anyone nearby. Out stepped a couple of contractors carrying tools and equipment. I didn't know if Karen had called for help or if someone else was involved now. But this added a whole new layer of complexity. What made things even stranger was how quickly Karen's attitude shifted. From panicked and flustered, she suddenly became cold and calculating. She started barking orders at the contractors, insisting they fix the problem immediately, but her tone was sharp, almost like she was blaming someone else, me, maybe? I wondered if she planned to turn this situation around, make it seem like I was the one causing damage to her home. even though she was the one who flooded my yard in the first place. The tension didn't just stay between us anymore. The whole block was now buzzing with rumors and speculation. Neighbors who had once been on the sidelines started taking sides openly. Some sided with Karen, saying maybe I had gone too far, while others quietly supported me, pointing out how unfair it spalled me. It was for her to just dump pool water onto my property. The community felt divided, and what started as a simple dispute over water had grown into a full-blown neighborhood drama. On top of that, the HOA suddenly decided to get involved, sending an official notice about water damage complaints. It was clear they had been watching, waiting for something to push them into action. Now, with contractors at Karen's house and official warnings flying around, the stakes were higher than ever. This wasn't just about flooded yards anymore. It was about reputation, responsibility, and who really had the power in this neighborhood. The question hanging in the air was, how far would Karen go to protect herself? And how much worse could this water war get before it finally reached a breaking point? The tension reached a boiling point one late afternoon when Karen stormed over to my yard, furious and demanding answers. Her contractors had discovered the rerouted pipes I had installed. And suddenly, the whole neighborhood was buzzing with the news. She accused me of vandalism, trying to make me look like the bad neighbor. But I stayed calm, explaining that I only redirected the water she had been carelessly flooding into my yard for months. The moment was electric. Neighbors gathered around, watching this showdown unfold just as Karen raised her voice to threaten, calling the HOA and even the city. A sudden knock came at her front door. It was the HOA representative who had come to clarify the complaints and assess the damage firsthand. After inspecting both yards and listening to both sides, the representative delivered a verdict that surprised everyone. The HOA acknowledged the flooding was caused by improper pool drainage on Karen's property, and that her refusal to address the issue was unacceptable. They instructed her to fix her drainage system immediately and warned of fines if the flooding continued. Karen's face fell. The contractors she hired weren't just there to fix her living room. They had been called in by the HOA to inspect and prepare for repairs she couldn't ignore. The tables had officially turned. The neighborhood tension shifted, with many residents expressing relief that the problem was finally being addressed. But just when it seemed the conflict was resolving, a new twist came. Karen's lawyer showed up, claiming the water rerouting was illegal and threatening to sue for property damage caused by my intervention. The unexpected legal threat brought the story to a dramatic pause, leaving me wondering if this neighborhood feud was really over or if it was just the beginning of a whole new battle. As the sun set, both sides stood their ground, and the neighborhood held its breath, waiting to see what would come next in this wild saga of entitlement, water wars, and standing up for what's right. After the lawyer's threat, things could have spiraled out of control, but I decided to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Instead of diving into a messy legal battle, I reached out to Karen with a proposal to sit down and talk, just a simple conversation to find a real solution. Surprisingly, after all the drama and tension, she agreed. Maybe the flooding and the attention had finally made her realize this wasn't something to keep ignoring. When we met, it wasn't easy. There was still frustration and pride on both sides, but talking face to face helped clear the air. I explained how much the flooding had affected my family and property, and Karen shared some of her struggles with managing the pool and the contractors. We found common ground in wanting peace in the neighborhood and agreed to work together on fixing the drainage properly with the HOA's guidance. Over the next few weeks, Karen hired professionals to repair her pool drainage system the right way, and I helped monitor the progress to make sure the flooding stopped. The yard dried up, the plants bounced back, and the kids started playing outside again. The neighborhood noticed the change too, and the quiet tension between us slowly faded. This whole experience was a tough lesson in patience, communication, and standing up for what's right without letting things get out of hand. It showed me how entitlement and ignoring others can lead to bigger problems, but also how sometimes even difficult neighbors can find a way to coexist. In the end, it wasn't about winning or losing. It was about respecting boundaries and working together as a community. And while the water war with Karen started as a frustrating battle, it ended as a reminder that even the most challenging situations can find peace with understanding and effort. Thanks for following along. Stay tuned for more real stories about neighbors, entitlement, and unexpected twists.